With us now, Colby Hall, founding editor at Mediaite, on balance, resident philosopher. Getting back to the coverage of this, Colby, why are there so many reporters who are just so excited about bracing to brace? It's unbelievable.
Well, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. And if it looks like it possibly could bleed, well, then you're going to go cover it because this is the conflict. Now, you know, in defense of my fellow journalists, you know, we thought the events of January 6th were unimaginable. No one ever thought that would have happened. And yet it did. And so that now opens the Overton window of possibilities, right? I don't think, as you said in your intro, that anything is going to happen, in part because while there's been sort of a call to arms, a rhetorical call to arms, lately I've been seeing a lot of people on the right saying like, oh, it's a trap. Don't take the bait. There's going to be a lot of feds there. And of course, as you astutely noticed, there's going to be way more reporters there covering a potential protest that will probably be dozens of ne'er-do-wells that will make the events of Lower Manhattan during Trump's first indictment look like even less of a circus.
Yeah, I guess I get the idea that it potentially can bleed, but at what point does talking about the potential for protest and then showing pictures of January 6th, which, as you point out, was a very dark day in America, but to sort of use that as a cudgel now, it doesn't quite feel like people are rooting for violence, but it certainly seems as though there's a lot of reporters who really wouldn't mind it.
Right. Well, that's what I've said. Like, if it bleeds, like you're right to say that they want conflict. They'd say this. Every journalist wants to break the big story and be there where something really big happens, even if it's a horrible. Right. I will say that.
Right. Okay. Hold on. But look, I was an old war correspondent. Okay. There's nobody who liked to be in the action more than I did. But at some level, when you start rooting for the action and rooting for the action on TV and in your reporting, I'm wondering if it doesn't become, if not a self-fulfilling prophecy, but horribly disingenuous. If we're supposed to report on events that have happened, you'd have to say every time you covered this, and the last time President Trump was indicted and we went through an arraignment, absolutely nothing happened. That's just missing.
Well, that's exactly right. I think time will tell. Like, I think there is a real risk of self-fulfilling prophecy. You took the words right out of my mouth. I do think what happened here is they ended up warning and sending up an alarm is part of the reason why that won't happen. But I will say there's a lot of like hardcore Trump supporters who are very, very angry because they haven't read the indictment and they're taking their cues from someone who is literally sort of riling up. He's rabble-rousing, right? And I think there has been danger there. But I think to the media point, yeah, you can't sort of have a predictive saying that this horrible thing. It starts with incredulity and leads on irresponsibility in terms of how journalists need to keep their powder dry and save the big dire warnings for big dire issues.
Yeah, well, look, you think about it. Ron DeSantis is running for governor or for president. The governor of the state isn't going to let anything happen. You got Francis Suarez, who's the mayor of Miami, rumored VP person. He's not going to let anything happen. You've got the Secret Service there. You've got a relatively Democratic city. We saw in New York, not much happened. But fine, I'll leave it where you are. I want to play the soundbite from Eric Erickson talking about Trump's effect on the media. And take a listen.
Republicans want to talk and look to the future. It's actually the media that wants to hold them in the past, the media that wants to anchor them to Trump, the media that wants to bind all Republicans to him. He himself has a vested interest in doing this. The media, of course, which says they loathe him, they want to hold him accountable, they want to move on from him, they're anchored to him because he's good for ratings.
Forget for a second whether Republicans want to live in the present or the future or the past, because there's a lot of Republicans who want to live in the past. But at some point, can the media have it both ways, that Trump is this awful, terrible, horrible human being that they're going to cover now wall to wall?
All of the above. I mean, I think that there are Republicans that are still sort of wedded to the anchor of Trump, and there's the media more than anything else want to do that also. And by the way, Trump is a huge sort of larger than life character. He's a huge disruptor who talks a lot of constant trash on the media, who haven't shown thus far much discipline in not taking the bait, right? So I think Eric Erickson's larger point, if you sort of take all that away, is that candidates that do well typically do well because they speak a message of hope and future.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.